Maple Street wasn't the kind of place people thought about. It wasn't famous, it wasn't beautiful in any dramatic way, it didn't have the skyline of New York or the energy of Los Angeles. It was just ordinary. Two lanes of cracked asphalt stretched quietly between rows of aging buildings. A small grocery store sat on the corner, its sign flickering at night. A laundromat hummed day and night, its windows fogged from heat and soap. There was a bakery that smelled like cinnamon in the mornings, and across from it, a narrow sidewalk where people passed each other without ever really seeing one another. And halfway down that sidewalk, under a fading maple tree, there was a bench. The bench had once been painted green, but years of rain and sun had peeled it down to tired wood and rusted bolts. One of its slats was slightly cracked. If you sat on the far left side, it dipped just enough to remind you that time had weight. Most people didn't notice the bench, and even fewer noticed the man who sat on it. His name was Walter Harris. At least that's what it used to be when people still called him by name. Now he was just that guy, the homeless man, the one on Maple Street. Walter arrived every morning just after sunrise, not because he had somewhere to be, but because he had nowhere else to go. He walked slowly, his body stiff from sleeping in places not meant for sleep. Sometimes it was behind the laundromat, sometimes near the back of the grocery store where the wind didn't hit as hard. On colder nights, he stayed near a heating vent outside an office building. He carried everything he owned in a worn-out backpack that used to be blue, but had long since faded into something unrecognizable. Inside it were a thin blanket, a photograph folded so many times the edges had softened, a pair of socks, and a small notebook he never wrote in anymore. When Walter reached the bench, he would sit down carefully, almost respectfully, like the bench was doing him a favor. Then he would exhale, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to say, "I made it through another night." The mornings on Maple Street were the busiest. People rushed past with coffee cups in hand, their breath visible in the cold. Shoes clicked against pavement, phones rang, car doors slammed. Walter watched all of it, not in a curious way, but in a distant one, like someone watching a life they used to live, because once he had been one of them. Years ago, Walter didn't sit on benches, he built things. He worked at a manufacturing plant just outside town. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was steady, honest, predictable. He liked predictable. Every morning he woke up at 6 a.m. Every day he packed his lunch. Every evening he came home at 5:30 p.m. And every single evening, a little girl would run toward him the moment he stepped through the door. "Dad!" Her name was Lily. She had wild, untamed hair and a laugh that filled the entire house. She never walked when she could run, and she never whispered when she could shout. Walter used to pretend he was too tired to play. He would drop his bag, sigh dramatically, and say, "Oh, I don't think I can today." And Lily would cross her arms and say, "Yes, you can." And somehow, he always could. The house wasn't big, just 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, and a couch that seen better days. But it was full of noise, full of warmth, full of something Walter didn't have words for, but felt every time he stepped inside. Eleanor created that feeling. She was the kind of person who noticed things, not big things, small ones, like when Walter was quieter than usual, or when Lily seemed upset but didn't say why, or when the house felt just a little too still. She filled those gaps without anyone asking. Dinner was always ready, even when money was tight. There was always music playing softly in the background, and no matter how hard the day had been, Eleanor had a way of making it feel like it hadn't won. Walter used to think that life would always stay that way, not perfect, but stable, safe, enough. Then, one afternoon, everything changed. It wasn't dramatic, no explosion, no warning, just a meeting. All the workers were called in. Managers stood at the front, their faces tight, their voices rehearsed. Walter knew something was wrong before they said a word. The factory will be shutting down operations, effective immediately. Some people shouted, some argued, some just stood there, stunned. Walter didn't react. He just stood still, his hands hanging at his sides, as if his body hadn't caught up with what his ears had heard. Because when something breaks slowly over time, you can adjust. But when it breaks all at once, there's nothing to hold on to. That evening, Walter walked home differently, slower. He stopped once, halfway there, staring at nothing in particular, trying to figure out how to walk through the front door and say the words out loud. Because once you say something like that, it becomes real. Eleanor knew before he spoke. She looked at his face and just knew. "Hey," she said softly. That was it. No panic, no fear, just, "Hey." Walter sat down, and for a long time neither of them spoke. Lily was in the other room, playing, her laughter drifting into the silence. It sounded distant. "We'll figure it out," Eleanor finally said. Walter nodded, because that's what you say when you don't have a plan. At first, it didn't seem so bad. Walter applied for jobs, dozens of them, then hundreds. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months. Each rejection was polite. "Thank you for your application. We've decided to move forward with other candidates. We wish you the best." The words blurred together. Money got tighter, then tighter, then it disappeared. The first argument happened over something small. It always does. A bill, groceries, something that didn't matter until it did. Voices got louder, silence got longer, and then Eleanor got sick. It started with fatigue, then pain, then doctor visits, then more tests, then that word, the kind of word that changes the air in the room, the kind of word that makes everything else feel smaller. Walter tried to hold everything together. He really did. He worked odd jobs, night shifts, anything he could find. He slept less, he worried more, he smiled less. The house that once felt full started to feel fragile, like it was holding its breath. And one day, it couldn't hold on anymore. Years later, Walter sat on the bench on Maple Street. The memory of that house felt like something from another lifetime, like a dream he wasn't sure actually happened. He reached into his backpack and pulled out the photograph. It was worn, faded, but still clear enough. Eleanor sitting on the couch, Lily in her lap, both of them smiling. Walter traced the edge of the photo with his thumb, then carefully folded it again. People passed by him all day. Some glanced, most didn't. A few avoided looking at him entirely. To them, he was just part of the background, like the bench, like the street, like something that had always been there and always would be. But what they didn't know was this: Walter Harris hadn't always been invisible. He had been a father, a husband, a man with a life so full it overflowed. And now, he was just trying to survive one more day. By the time winter began to loosen its grip on Maple Street, people started walking a little slower. Not because life had become easier, but because the air had softened. The mornings weren't as sharp. The wind didn't cut through coats the same way. Patches of snow melted into thin streams that ran along the edges of the sidewalk, carrying away the last stubborn pieces of winter. The maple tree above the bench was still bare, but if you looked closely, there were tiny buds beginning to form. Small, fragile, easy to miss. Most people did miss them, just like they missed Walter. But not everyone. Every weekday at exactly 3:17 p.m., a girl walked down Maple Street. Not 3:16, not 3:18, 3:17. Her name was Emma Carter, and she believed in patterns. Patterns made the world feel organized, predictable, safe. She followed the same route home from school every day, past the bakery, across the crosswalk with the broken signal, along the stretch of sidewalk where the maple tree stood, and every day as she approached the bench, she noticed him. At first, it wasn't a big noticing.
Just a glance, the way you notice a parked car or a street sign. He was simply there, sitting, still, quiet. Emma had questions about everything. Why do birds tilt their heads when they walk? Why do adults always say later when they mean no? Why do some people smile at strangers and others don't? And eventually, why does that man sit there every day? The first time she asked her mother about him, they were driving past Maple Street. "Mom," she said, pointing out the window, "who is that?" Her mother glanced briefly, then looked back at the road. "I don't know, sweetheart." "Why is he always sitting there?" Her mother hesitated. Sometimes adults hesitate not because they don't have answers, but because they have too many. "He might not have anywhere else to go," she said carefully. Emma frowned. "That doesn't make sense." Her mother didn't reply, because sometimes it doesn't. After that, Emma started paying closer attention, not just seeing Walter, but observing him. The way he held his hands together when it was cold, the way he looked at people, but not directly at their faces, the way he seemed to exist just slightly outside of everything happening around him. He never asked for money, never called out, never tried to get anyone's attention. It was almost like he was trying to take up as little space as possible. That confused Emma the most, because if you wanted help, shouldn't you ask? For a few days, she considered talking to him. The idea would come to her as she approached the bench. I should say something. But then she would keep walking. Not out of fear, exactly. More like uncertainty. What do you say to someone no one else talks to? Then one afternoon, something small happened. But small things have a way of changing everything. Emma was walking home, her backpack bouncing slightly with each step, when the wind picked up suddenly. A strong gust rushed down the street, catching loose papers, wrappers, and anything light enough to lift. Walter's backpack, sitting beside him on the bench, tipped slightly, and something slipped out. A photograph. It landed face down on the sidewalk. Walter didn't notice. He was staring ahead, lost somewhere far away. Emma stopped. She looked at the photograph, then at Walter, then back at the photograph. For a moment, she hesitated, because this was the moment where a choice happens, a very small one, the kind that seems unimportant but isn't. She stepped forward, picked up the photograph, turned it over. It was a picture of a family. A woman sitting on a couch, a little girl in her lap, both smiling, and a man standing behind them, his hands resting gently on their shoulders. Emma looked up at Walter again, then back at the photo. Her brow furrowed. She walked closer to the bench. "Excuse me," she said. Walter blinked. The word didn't register at first. People didn't usually say "excuse me" to him. Not anymore. "Excuse me," Emma repeated a little louder. Walter turned his head slowly. Their eyes met. For a brief second, something unfamiliar passed between them. Recognition. Not of who they were, but of the fact that they were both there. "You dropped this," Emma said, holding out the photograph. Walter looked at it, then at her, then back at the photograph. His expression changed. Not dramatically, but enough. He reached out carefully, almost cautiously, and took it from her. "Thank you," he said. His voice was rough, like it hadn't been used much. Emma didn't walk away. She stood there, waiting, thinking. "Is that your family?" Walter froze. The question landed softly, but deeply. For a moment, he considered not answering. It would be easier, safer. But something about the way she asked, not curious in a careless way, but curious in a genuine way, made it harder to ignore. "Yes," he said quietly. Emma tilted her head slightly. "They look happy." Walter let out a small breath. They were. There was a pause. Not uncomfortable, just honest. Emma shifted her backpack on her shoulders. "Why aren't you with them?" And there it was, The question no adult had asked. The question everyone avoided. The question that didn't know it was too big. Walter looked down at the photograph in his hands. His thumb moved over the edge, tracing a line that had been traced 1,000 times before. "Life doesn't always go the way you think it will," he said. Emma frowned. That's not really an answer. For the first time in a long time, Walter almost smiled. "No," he admitted, "it's not." Another pause. Then Emma did something unexpected. She sat down, right next to him. Not on the far edge of the bench, not leaving space between them, but close enough that it meant something. Walter stiffened slightly, not because he didn't want her there, but because he wasn't used to anyone choosing to be. "My name is Emma," she said. Walter looked at her again, really looked this time, at her steady eyes, her unfiltered expression, her complete lack of hesitation. "Walter," he replied. "Hi, Walter." No one had said his name like that in years, not rushed, not distracted, not uncomfortable, just said it. Cars passed, people walked by, a few glanced at the unusual sight, a young girl sitting beside a man most people avoided. But Emma didn't notice them. "Do you live here?" she asked. Walter hesitated, then gave the only answer he had. "Sometimes." Emma frowned again. "You can't sometimes live somewhere." Walter looked at the street ahead. "You'd be surprised." Emma thought about that, really thought about it. "Do you get cold?" "Yes." "Do you get hungry?" "Yes." She nodded slowly, as if confirming something to herself. "Okay," she said. Walter blinked. "Okay?" "Okay," she repeated. Then she stood up, brushing off her skirt. "I have to go home now. My mom doesn't like it when I'm late." Walter nodded. "That's good." Emma took a few steps away, then turned back. "I'll see you tomorrow, Walter." He didn't answer right away, because people didn't usually come back, but something in her voice made it feel different. "Okay." And just like that, she left. Walter sat there, the photograph still in his hand, but now it didn't feel as heavy. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't just waiting for the day to end. He was waiting for tomorrow.
The next morning felt different. Not because the weather had changed, not because Maple Street looked any different, but because Walter woke up expecting something. He didn't realize it at first. He went through the same routine, slowly sitting up from the cold concrete behind the laundromat, rolling his shoulders to ease the stiffness, reaching for his backpack and checking, out of habit, that everything was still there. Blanket, socks, notebook, photograph. Still there. Still his. Still all he had. But as he stood up and began walking toward Maple Street, there was something unfamiliar in his chest. Not pain, not heaviness, something lighter, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Anticipation. Walter frowned slightly as he walked. He didn't like that feeling, because anticipation leads to expectation, and expectation leads to disappointment. He had learned that lesson slowly, painfully over the years. So he tried to push it down, tried to convince himself, she probably won't come back. It was just a moment. People don't stay. Still, he walked a little faster than usual. When he reached the bench, it was empty. Of course it was. It was early. Too early. Walter sat down, same spot, same posture, hands folded loosely together, eyes watching the street. People passed. Morning turned to afternoon. The sun climbed higher, then softened. Shadows stretched longer across the sidewalk. Walter told himself he wasn't waiting, but every time someone small walked into view, his eyes shifted just slightly. 3:10 p.m. A group of teenagers walked by, laughing loudly. Not her. 3:14 p.m. A woman hurried past, talking on her phone. Not her. 3:16 p.m. Walter's chest tightened just a little. 3:17 p.m. There you are. Walter turned his head quickly, too quickly. Emma stood there, slightly out of breath, her backpack hanging off one shoulder, like she had hurried. For a moment, Walter didn't speak because something inside him had been proven wrong, and he didn't quite know how to react to that. "You came back," he said. Emma frowned slightly. "I said I would." Walter nodded slowly. "Yes," he said, "you did." She sat down beside him again, same spot as yesterday, same closeness, same certainty. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. But this silence felt different, less like emptiness, more like space. Then Emma reached into her backpack. "I brought you something," she said. Walter stiffened slightly. "Emma, you don't have to. It's just a sandwich." She pulled out a small paper bag and handed it to him. Walter looked at it, then at her, then back at the bag. His hands didn't move right away, because this was different. A conversation is one thing, a shared moment is one thing, but this was care, and care comes with weight. "I can't take that," he said quietly. Emma tilted her head. "Why not?" Walter hesitated, because how do you explain pride to someone who hasn't learned to hide behind it yet? "It's yours," he said. Emma shrugged. "My mom made too many." "That's okay. You should keep it." Emma looked at him for a long second. Then she said something simple, something direct, something that didn't leave room for excuses. "I brought it for you." Walter swallowed. There was no pity in her voice, no judgment, no hesitation, just intention. Slowly, carefully, he reached out and took the bag. "Thank you," he said. Emma smiled. "Okay." Walter opened the bag. Inside was a peanut butter sandwich, neatly wrapped, an apple, and a small folded piece of paper. He paused. "What's this?" he asked, holding up the note. Emma shrugged again. "I don't know. My mom does that sometimes." Walter unfolded it. The handwriting was neat, gentle. "Everyone deserves kindness. Stay warm." Walter stared at the words, once, twice, 3 times. Something in his chest shifted, not suddenly, not dramatically, but deeply, because it had been a long time since anyone did something kind for him without expecting anything in return. He folded the note carefully, more carefully than he had unfolded it, and placed it inside his jacket. "I think your mom is a good person," he said. Emma nodded. "Yeah, she is." Walter took a bite of the sandwich, slowly, like he didn't want it to end too quickly. They sat there together as he ate, Emma swinging her legs slightly, Walter chewing thoughtfully. "Do you like peanut butter?" Walter almost smiled. "Yes," he said, "I do." "Good, because I don't like tuna." Walter let out a small, quiet laugh. The sound surprised him. It had been a long time since laughter came without effort. Days began to take on a new shape after that. Every afternoon Emma came, sometimes with stories, sometimes with questions, sometimes with nothing at all, and sometimes with food. But it wasn't just the food, it was the consistency, the presence, the simple, steady reminder that someone remembered he existed. Walter started noticing things again, the way the sunlight filtered through the branches of the maple tree, the rhythm of footsteps on the sidewalk, the sound of Emma's voice approaching before he even saw her. And slowly, very slowly, the world around him began to feel less distant. But healing, even the smallest kind, is never simple, because for every moment of warmth, there are shadows that follow. One afternoon, as Walter sat alone on the bench, he overheard two men walking past. "That guy's still here?" one of them muttered. "Yeah, people like that don't change." Walter's jaw tightened slightly. People like that. The words lingered long after they were gone, because no matter how many small moments of kindness appear, the world has a way of reminding you where it thinks you belong. That evening, when Emma arrived, she immediately noticed something was off. "You're quiet today," she said. Walter forced a small shrug. "Just tired." Emma studied him, not casually, but carefully. "You're lying," she said. Walter blinked. "I'm not." "You are," she insisted. "Your face looks different." Walter looked away, because she wasn't wrong, and for a moment he considered telling her about the comments, about the way the world still saw him, about how fragile this new feeling was. But instead he said, "It's nothing." Emma didn't push, not right away. She reached into her bag again, but this time there was no sandwich. Instead, she pulled out something else, a small notebook. She handed it to him. Walter frowned slightly. "What's this?" Emma shrugged. "It's for you." Walter turned it over in his hands. It was simple, plain, unused. "I already have one," he said. "You don't use it," Walter replied. Paused. "How do you know that?" She shrugged. "You always look at it, but you never write." Walter didn't respond, because she was right. "I think you should," she said. "Write what?" he asked. Emma thought for a moment, then said, "Anything you don't want to forget." Walter looked down at the notebook. "Anything you don't want to forget." The words settled somewhere deep, because there were so many things he had already lost, memories that had faded, moments that had slipped away, pieces of a life he wasn't sure he could ever get back. And maybe, just maybe, there were still things worth holding on to. Walter nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. Emma smiled. "Okay." And for the first time in years, Walter felt something he thought was gone forever. Not happiness, not yet, but something close. Hope.
Spring didn't stay as long as people hoped. It rarely does. For a few brief weeks, Maple Street felt almost alive. The maple tree above the bench began to bloom, small green leaves unfolding like quiet promises. The bakery kept its door open longer, letting the smell of fresh bread spill into the street. People smiled a little more, walked a little slower. And for Walter, those weeks felt like something close to peace. Every afternoon at 3:17 p.m., Emma came. That never changed, not once. Some days she talked nonstop about school, about her friends, about things that felt big to her and small to the world. Some days she sat quietly beside him, swinging her legs, watching the street like he did. And some days she asked questions that stayed with him long after she left. "Do you miss your family?" "Yes." "Do you think they miss you?" "I don't know." "Why didn't you go back?" That question always lingered the longest, because the answer wasn't simple. It wasn't just one reason, it was many. Shame, fear, time, the feeling that too much had passed to fix anything. So Walter would usually say something like, "It's complicated," and Emma would frown, because she didn't like complicated answers. "You always say that," she told him one afternoon. Walter gave a small, tired smile, because sometimes that's the only honest answer. Emma didn't argue, but she didn't accept it either, because in her world, problems had solutions. You fix things, you try again. You don't just sit on a bench and disappear. But Walter's world had taught him something different. Sometimes you lose something, and you don't get it back. Then, slowly, the weather began to change again. At first it was subtle, cooler mornings, longer nights, a sharper wind. Then came the rain, days of it, heavy, steady, relentless.
the kind that soaks through everything, clothes, shoes, skin. Walter still came to the bench, even when it was wet, even when the wood was cold and slick, because routine had become his anchor, and because Emma would come. And she did. One afternoon, she arrived holding an umbrella that was slightly too big for her. She struggled with it as the wind pushed against the fabric, flipping it halfway inside out before she managed to fix it. "You're going to fly away with that thing," Walter said. "I almost did," she replied, laughing. She sat down beside him, tilting the umbrella so it covered both of them. For a moment, they just listened to the rain. "Do you ever wish things were different?" Emma asked suddenly. Walter looked at the street ahead, water rushing along the edges of the pavement. "Yes," he said. "All the time?" He paused, then nodded. Emma was quiet for a while. Then she said something softly. "I think they still miss you." Walter's chest tightened. "You don't know that," he said. "I do," she insisted. "If you were my dad, I would." Walter looked at his hands. The rain hit harder against the umbrella. "I wasn't very good one," he said. Emma turned toward him. "You came home every day, right?" Walter blinked. "Yes." "You played with your daughter?" "Yes." "You loved her?" Walter's voice caught slightly. "More than anything." Emma nodded. "Then you were a good dad." Walter didn't respond, because sometimes hearing something simple feels harder than hearing something painful, and sometimes you don't believe the good things said about you. A week later, the temperature dropped suddenly. The rain turned into something colder, heavier. Snow. It wasn't supposed to come that early, but it did, and it came fast. The first day, people were excited. The second day, they were cautious. By the third day, it became a problem. The streets grew quieter. People stayed indoors earlier. Shops closed earlier. But Walter still came to the bench, because routine doesn't change just because the weather does, and because hope, even fragile hope, can make you do things that don't make sense to anyone else. He sat there wrapped in his thin blanket, his breath visible in the cold air. His hands trembled slightly, but his eyes stayed on the street, waiting. 3:10 p.m. No one. 3:14 p.m. A car passed slowly, tires crunching through the snow. 3:16 p.m. Walter leaned forward slightly. 3:17 p.m. Nothing. Walter sat back. "It's just the weather," he muttered to himself. Of course she wouldn't come. It was too cold, too dangerous. He nodded slowly, as if convincing himself. "Tomorrow," he said quietly. But tomorrow came, and Emma didn't. Nor the next day, nor the day after that. The bench grew colder, quieter, and the anticipation that once filled Walter's chest started to fade, replaced with something familiar, emptiness. On the fourth day, Walter didn't go to the bench, not because he didn't want to, but because his body wouldn't let him. The cold had settled deep into his bones. His movements were slower, his breathing heavier. He stayed behind the laundromat, wrapped in his blanket, trying to conserve what little strength he had. But the nights were brutal, colder than anything he had felt in years. And alone, the cold feels worse. Meanwhile, Emma noticed immediately. The first day he wasn't there, she thought, maybe he came earlier. The second day, maybe he left early. By the third day, she knew something was wrong. "Mom," she said, standing by the window, watching the snow fall. "He's not there." Her mother looked up. "Who?" "Walter." There was a pause, the kind of pause that carries concern. "I haven't seen him in days." Her mother set down her mug slowly, because she understood something Emma didn't fully yet. Sometimes, when people disappear like that, it's not random. "Maybe he found somewhere warmer," her mother said carefully. Emma shook her head. "No," she said. "He would have told me."
Her voice was certain, and that certainty made the silence that followed feel heavier. Emma turned back to the window. The bench on Maple Street was barely visible through the falling snow. Empty. And for the first time since she met him, Emma felt something she couldn't quite name. Not just worry, something deeper. Fear.
The snow didn't stop. It fell through the night. It fell through the morning. It fell like the sky had forgotten how to do anything else. Maple Street disappeared beneath it. The cracks in the pavement vanished. The edges of the sidewalk blurred. The bench, Walter's bench, became just a shape under white, barely recognizable unless you knew exactly where to look. And Emma knew exactly where to look. She stood by the window longer than usual that morning. Her backpack was already on. Her shoes were tied. Breakfast sat half-eaten on the table behind her. But she didn't move. "Emma," her mother called gently, "you're going to be late." "I know," she said, but she didn't step away from the window, because she was waiting to see something. A movement, a figure, anything. But the bench stayed empty. There's a difference between not seeing someone and knowing they should be there but aren't. Emma felt that difference now, and it didn't sit right in her chest. "Mom," she said again, her voice quieter this time. Her mother walked over, standing beside her. "What is it?" Emma pointed. "There." Her mother followed her finger. The bench, covered in snow, empty. "He's not there," Emma said. Her mother nodded slowly. "I can see that." Emma turned to her. "No, you don't understand. He's never not there." There was something in her voice now, something stronger than concern, something closer to certainty. "He said he comes every day," Emma continued, "even when it rains, even when it's cold." Her mother crossed her arms slightly, thinking. "And he didn't come the last 3 days?" she asked. Emma shook her head. 4. That number hung in the air. 4 days, not a coincidence anymore. Her mother exhaled slowly. "Okay," she said. "We'll check after school." Emma didn't like that answer. "Why not now?" "Because I have work and you have school," her mother replied gently. "But we will check, I promise." Emma hesitated. Promises mattered to her, but so did timing. "What if something happened already?" she asked. Her mother looked at her, really looked this time, and she saw it. That feeling in Emma's eyes, the kind that doesn't come from imagination, the kind that comes from knowing something is wrong. "We'll check as soon as we can," she said, a little more firmly. Emma nodded, but the unease didn't leave. School that day felt slower than usual. The clock ticked louder. The lessons felt longer. Even her friends noticed something was off. "Are you okay?" one of them asked during lunch. Emma shrugged. "I think so." But she wasn't, because her mind wasn't in the classroom. It was on Maple Street, on a bench, on a man who always said okay, like it meant more than just a word. By the time the final bell rang, Emma was already halfway out the door. The cold hit her immediately, sharp, unforgiving. Her mother was waiting in the car. Emma jumped in quickly, pulling the door shut behind her. "Seatbelt," her mother said automatically. Emma clicked it in place. "Can we go now?" she asked. Her mother nodded. "I already know where we're going." The drive to Maple Street felt longer than usual. The roads were slippery. Traffic moved slowly. Snow piled up along the sides like walls. Emma stared out the window the entire time. When they finally turned onto Maple Street, her heart started beating faster. "There," she said quickly. The car slowed. The bench came into view. Still empty. Emma's chest dropped. "Stop," she said. Her mother pulled over carefully. Emma opened the door before the car had fully settled. "Emma, wait!" her mother called,
but Emma was already running. Her boots crunched through the snow as she made her way to the bench. Up close, it looked worse. Untouched. The snow on it was thick, undisturbed. No one had sat there, not for days. Emma brushed some of the snow off the seat with her gloved hands, as if maybe he had just stepped away for a moment. But deep down, she knew. "He's not here," she said softly. Her mother walked behind her. "No," she replied. There was a pause. Then Emma turned around. "Where is he?" Her mother didn't answer right away, because that question was no longer simple. They started asking around, the grocery store first. "Have you seen a man who sits outside? Older, brown coat?" Emma asked the cashier. The woman frowned, thinking. "I think I've seen him before," she said slowly. "How long?" Emma pressed. She hesitated. "A few days, maybe more?" Next, the laundromat. A man behind the counter nodded slightly. "Yeah, I know who you're talking about." Emma leaned forward. "Have you seen him?" The man sighed. "Last I saw him, he didn't look good," he said. Emma's heart tightened. "What do you mean?" her mother asked. "Cold," the man replied. "Real cold. He was shaking bad. That was maybe 4 nights ago?" 4 nights. The same number again. Emma's hands curled into fists. "Where did he go?" she asked. The man shook his head. "Don't know. These folks, they move around." These folks. Emma didn't like that, because Walter wasn't just these folks. He was Walter. Back in the car, the silence felt heavier. Emma stared at her hands. "He was cold," she said quietly. Her mother nodded. "And alone." Another nod. Emma looked up. "We have to find him." Her mother tightened the grip on the steering wheel. "Emma." "No," Emma said, her voice stronger now. "We have to." There was something different in her tone, not just worry, determination, the kind that doesn't let things go. Her mother looked at her and made a decision. "Okay," she said. Emma blinked. "Okay?" she repeated. Her mother nodded. "Okay, we'll find him." They checked shelters, asking. Each time the same answer. "No? Sorry, I don't think so." Hours passed. Daylight began to fade. The sky turned gray, then darker. Emma's energy started to drop, but her determination didn't. "Just one more," she said. Her mother hesitated, then nodded. The hospital was the last place they checked, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. Hospitals are where people go when something goes wrong, and now something had. The doors slid open, warm air rushed out to meet the cold. Emma stepped inside slowly. The smell hit her first. Clean, sharp, unfamiliar. She held her mother's hand tighter. At the front desk, her mother spoke quietly. "Hi, we're looking for someone." The nurse looked up. "Name?" Emma spoke before her mother could. "Walter." Then more firmly, "Walter Harris." The nurse paused, typed something into the computer. A few seconds passed. Then her expression changed. Not dramatically, but enough. Emma felt it immediately. "Yes," the nurse said. Emma's heart jumped. "He was brought in a few nights ago." The words hit like a sudden drop. "Is he okay?" Emma asked quickly. The nurse hesitated, and in that hesitation, everything felt fragile. "He's stable," she said carefully. Stable, a word that means not worse, but not necessarily better. Emma swallowed. "Can we see him?" she asked. The nurse looked at her mother. Her mother nodded. "Yes," the nurse said. And as they followed her down the hallway, Emma's heart beat louder than anything else. because the fear she felt before was about to become something real.
Hospitals have a different kind of silence. It's not quiet in the way a library is quiet. It's layered. Machines hum softly in the background. Footsteps echo down long hallways. Distant voices speak in low tones, careful and controlled. And beneath all of it, there's something else. Something you can't hear, but you can feel. Uncertainty. Emma felt it the moment she stepped inside. Her hand tightened around her mother's as they followed the nurse down the hallway. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because the distance was long, but because of where it was leading. Room 214. The nurse stopped at the door. She turned slightly, her voice gentle. "He's been unconscious on and off," she said. "If he wakes up, just speak to him normally." Emma nodded, but her throat had already gone dry. The nurse pushed the door open slowly, and for a moment, Emma didn't move, because the person in the bed didn't look like the Walter she knew. He looked smaller, not physically exactly, but diminished. The brown coat was gone, replaced with a thin hospital gown. His beard was still there, but messier somehow. His face looked paler, sharper, like the edges of him had been worn down. Machines stood beside him. A monitor blinked softly, a slow, steady rhythm. Beep, pause, beep. His eyes were closed, and for the first time since she met him, Walter wasn't watching the world go by. He was completely still. Emma stepped forward slowly, each step careful, measured, as if moving too quickly might break something. "Walter?" she said softly. No response. Her chest tightened. She moved closer to the bed. "Walter, it's me." Still nothing. Emma looked back at her mother. Her mother gave a small nod, encouraging but concerned. Emma turned back. "You said I'd see you tomorrow," she whispered. The words trembled slightly. And then something small happened, so small it would have been easy to miss. Walter's fingers twitched. Emma froze. "Mom," she said quickly. "I saw it," her mother replied. They both leaned in slightly. "Walter?" Emma said again, a little louder this time. The monitor continued its steady rhythm. Beep, pause, beep. Then, slowly, very slowly, Walter's eyelids moved. Not fully, just enough to show that something inside him was trying. Emma's heart jumped. "Walter, it's Emma," she said, her voice now filled with urgency. "I'm here." There was a pause, a long one. Then his eyes opened, just barely. The light in the room made him squint, his vision unfocused. Shapes, shadows, movement, and then a voice. Familiar. "Emma?" he whispered. It was faint, rough, but it was there. Emma gasped softly. Yes, it's me," she said quickly. "I found you." Walter blinked slowly, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. "You came," he murmured. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Of course I did. You weren't on the bench." Walter's lips moved slightly, almost forming a smile. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Emma shook her head immediately. "No," she said firmly. "You don't get to say sorry." Walter blinked again. "You said tomorrow," he continued, her voice shaking now. "You always say tomorrow." Walter's eyes drifted for a moment. "Got cold," he said. The simplicity of it hit harder than anything else. Got cold. As if that explained everything, as if that was enough to describe nights that nearly took his life. Emma reached out slowly and took his hand. It was colder than she expected, even now. "You should have told me," she said softly. Walter's fingers moved slightly in hers. "Didn't have to," he whispered. Emma frowned. "Yes, you did," she said. Walter looked at her, really looked this time, and something in his expression shifted, because for the first time in years, someone wasn't seeing him as a burden or a problem or people like that. She was seeing him as someone who mattered. "You came," he said again. Emma nodded. "I said I would." There was a silence after that, but it wasn't empty. It was full of everything that didn't need to be said. Regret, relief, fear, hope. Walter's eyes began to close again. "Don't go," Emma said quickly. "I'm tired," he murmured. Emma tightened her grip on his hand. "Then sleep, but I'll be here when you wake up." Walter exhaled slowly, and for the first time in a long time, that breath didn't feel like survival. It felt like rest. His eyes closed. The monitor continued its steady rhythm. Beep. Pause. Beep. Emma sat there, still holding his hand. Minutes passed, then more. Her mother sat quietly nearby, watching. After a while, she spoke softly. "You did something important today," she said. Emma didn't look away from Walter. "I just found my friend," she replied. Her mother smiled faintly. "Yes," she said, "you did." That night, for the first time in days, Emma didn't feel fear when she looked at Maple Street, because even though the bench was still empty, Walter wasn't lost anymore. He had been found. But what none of them knew yet was that something much bigger had already started, because one small act of kindness had reached further than they could see, and soon the world would notice.
The hospital room was quiet that night. Not empty quiet, but peaceful. Walter slept. Not the restless, half-aware sleep of someone surviving the streets, but real sleep. The kind where your body finally lets go. Emma sat beside him longer than she was supposed to, longer than visiting hours, longer than her mother had planned. "You need to rest too," her mother said gently. Emma shook her head. "I'm fine." Her eyes stayed on Walter, because something had changed. He wasn't just the man on the bench anymore. He wasn't just someone she talked to after school. He was someone she almost lost, and that realization made everything feel more important. Eventually, her mother placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll come back tomorrow," she said softly. Emma hesitated, then nodded. But before she left, she leaned closer to Walter. "You'd better wake up again," she whispered. A small pause. "Because I'm not done talking to you." The next morning, something unexpected began. It started with Emma's mother. After dropping Emma at school, she sat in her car for a moment longer than usual. Her hands rested on the steering wheel, but her mind was somewhere else, on a bench, on a man, on how close everything had come to ending quietly, unnoticed. She took out her phone, paused, then opened her social media. She didn't overthink it, didn't try to make it perfect. She just told the story about a man who sat on a bench every day, about a little girl who stopped walking, about a sandwich, a note, a friendship, and then about how he disappeared and was found in a hospital, cold, alone, almost gone. At the end, she wrote something simple. "His name is Walter. He is not invisible, and he deserves a second chance." She posted it, and for a while, nothing happened. At the hospital, Walter woke again, this time a little stronger. His eyes opened more easily, his breathing steadier. Emma was there again, right on time. "You're still here," he said softly. Emma smiled. "I told you I would be." Walter looked around the room slowly. "It feels strange," he admitted. "What does?" Emma asked. "Being somewhere safe," he said. Emma didn't respond right away, because to her, that didn't feel strange. It felt normal. And in that moment, she realized something quietly important. What feels normal to one person can feel like a miracle to another. Meanwhile, online, something was happening. One person shared the post, then another, then 10, then 50, then hundreds. People started commenting. "Does anyone know how we can help? Where is he?" This made me cry. No one deserves to be forgotten like this. The story spread, not because it was dramatic, not because it was polished,
but because it was real. A man, a bench, a child who cared. And in a world where people scroll past everything, this time they stopped. By the afternoon, thousands had seen it. By evening, messages began to come in. Offers, questions, support. Emma's mother stared at her phone in disbelief. "I didn't expect this," she whispered. Emma leaned over. "What's happening?" she asked. Her mother turned the screen toward her. People from different cities, different states, even different countries, all reacting. "They want to help him," her mother said. Emma blinked. "All of them?" she asked. Her mother nodded slowly. "Yes," she said, "all of them." The next day, it grew even bigger. Local news picked it up, then larger platforms. The story had a name now, The Man on the Bench. But something important remained, his real name, Walter. At the hospital, a nurse walked into the room with a small smile. "You've become quite popular," she said. Walter frowned slightly. "I have?" he asked. Emma grinned. "You're famous," she said. Walter blinked. "I don't think I want to be," he replied. Emma laughed. "Well, too late." Then the door opened again. A doctor stepped in. "Walter, we've had a number of people reach out asking how they can support you." Walter looked confused. "Support me?" he repeated. "Yes," the doctor said. "Housing assistance, job offers, donations." Walter shook his head slowly. "I didn't ask for any of that." Emma leaned forward. "I know," she said. Walter looked at her. "You didn't have to." The room fell quiet, because sometimes the most powerful things in life happen without being asked. But the biggest surprise hadn't happened yet. That came later that evening when Emma and her mother were about to leave. A nurse approached them. "Excuse me," she said. "There's someone here asking about Walter." Emma's heart skipped. "Who?" she asked. The nurse hesitated. She said she thinks she knows him. Back in the room, Walter looked up as the door slowly opened. Footsteps, soft, careful. A woman stepped inside. She looked nervous, unsure, like someone standing on the edge of something life-changing. Walter stared at her. At first, nothing happened, because time had passed. Years, pain, distance. But then, something shifted. Recognition. Not immediate, not clear, but real. The woman took a step forward. Her voice trembled. "Dad?" The word hung in the air. Walter's breath caught. His eyes widened, and suddenly everything came rushing back. "Lily?" he whispered. The room went completely still. Emma looked between them, confused, amazed, because the story she thought she understood was about to become something much bigger.
The word Dad didn't just echo in the room. It stopped everything. Time didn't move. The machines didn't feel like they were beeping anymore. Even the air in the room seemed to pause, like it was waiting to see what would happen next. Walter didn't breathe, not at first, because there are moments in life so unexpected, so overwhelming, that your body forgets how to react. "Dad?" The woman's voice trembled again, softer this time, uncertain, like she was afraid she had made a mistake. Walter's eyes stayed locked on her, trying to understand, trying to recognize, trying to believe, because the face in front of him was both familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. The little girl from his memories had grown into someone else. Her hair was longer, her face more defined, her eyes older, wiser, touched by time. But those eyes were the same. And suddenly it hit him. Not gently, not slowly, all at once. "Lily," he whispered. His voice cracked halfway through her name, like it had been locked inside him for years, waiting for this exact moment to be released. The woman, Lily, took a step forward, then another, slow, careful, like she was walking toward something fragile. "It's me," she said, tears already forming in her eyes. "It's really me."
Walter tried to sit up. His body resisted, weak, unsteady, but this wasn't about strength anymore. This was something deeper. He pushed himself up slightly, wincing as his arms trembled. "I thought," he started, but the sentence fell apart, because how do you say something like that? How do you put years of loss into a single sentence? "I thought I lost you," he finally said. Lily shook her head quickly. "No," she said. "No, I was looking for you." That sentence landed like thunder. Walter blinked. "You what?" "I looked for you," she repeated, "for years." Silence filled the room again, but this silence was heavier, because now the past wasn't just something remembered, it was something being spoken out loud. "I didn't know where you went," Lily continued, her voice shaking. "After Mom, after everything, they told me you needed time, and I believed them." Walter lowered his gaze. "I waited," she said. The words were simple, but they carried weight. "I kept thinking you'd come back," she added. Walter's chest tightened painfully. "I wanted to," he said quickly, too quickly, like he needed her to believe it. "I tried. He struggled. "I didn't know how." Lily let out a shaky breath. "That doesn't make sense," she said. "I know," Walter replied. "I know it doesn't." He looked at his hands, thin, shaking slightly. "Every day that passed," Walter continued slowly, "it felt harder to come back." "Why?" she asked. Walter swallowed. "Because every day I stayed away, I felt like I was becoming someone you shouldn't see." Lily's expression changed. "That's not true," she said immediately. Walter shook his head. "It felt true," he replied. There was a long pause. Then Lily stepped closer, right beside the bed. "It's not your decision for me," she said softly. Walter looked up. Her eyes were filled with tears, but also something else, strength. "I needed you," she said, "and yes, you weren't there." Walter flinched slightly. "But that doesn't mean I stopped loving you." That broke him, not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. His shoulders dropped. His breathing became uneven, because sometimes the hardest thing to receive is forgiveness. "I don't deserve that," he whispered. Lily reached for his hand, took it, held it firmly. "That's not your decision either," she said. Walter looked at her, and for the first time in years, he didn't see disappointment. He didn't see anger. He saw something far more powerful, a chance. Across the room, Emma stood quietly. She hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, but her heart was racing because she was witnessing something she didn't fully understand, but could feel something important, something rare. She stepped forward slowly. "Hi," she said gently. Lily turned toward her. "Hi," she replied. "I'm Emma," she said. I know him from the bench." Lily's expression softened immediately. "The bench," she repeated. Emma nodded. "I used to walk past him every day. Then one day I stopped." Lily stared at her for a moment. Then she smiled through her tears. "You didn't just stop. You changed everything." Emma shook her head quickly. "No," she said. "No, I just talked to him." Lily's voice softened even more. "Exactly." Walter watched them both, and something inside him shifted again, because for the first time, his past and his present were in the same room, his daughter and the girl who reminded him how to live again. The room felt different now, warmer, fuller, like something that had been broken was slowly coming back together. Walter leaned back slightly against the bed. "I thought my story ended on that bench," Emma said. "It didn't," she said. Lily squeezed his hand. "It just paused." Walter let out a slow breath, and for the first time in a long time, he believed them.
That night,
No one really slept. The hospital grew quieter as the hours passed. Hallway lights dimmed slightly. Footsteps became less frequent. The distant hum of machines softened into the background. But inside room 214, there was no rest. Walter lay back against the pillow, eyes open, not staring at anything in particular, just thinking. Because for years, he had imagined this moment. Not clearly, not in detail, but in fragments. What would he say? Would she be angry? Would she walk away? Would she even want to see him? But now that it had actually happened, he realized something. Reality is heavier than imagination. Because in imagination, you can control the outcome. In reality, you have to face the truth. Across the room, Lily sat quietly. She hadn't left, not even when visiting hours ended, not even when the nurse gently suggested she should rest. "I'm fine," she had said, and she meant it, because after years of not knowing where he was, leaving now didn't feel like an option. Emma and her mother had gone home earlier, but Emma had turned back twice at the door. "Promise you'll be here tomorrow?" she asked Walter. He smiled faintly. "I'll try my best," he said. Emma frowned. "No," she insisted, "not try, be here." Walter looked at her for a long second, then nodded. "Okay," he said, "I'll be here." And for once, that word didn't feel uncertain. Now the room was quiet again. Walter turned his head slightly. "Lily," he said. She looked up immediately. "Yeah?" There was hesitation in his eyes, not because he didn't want to speak, but because he didn't know where to begin. "I don't know how to fix this," he admitted. Lily watched him carefully. "Fix what?" she asked. Walter let out a slow breath. "All of it," he said. The word all carried everything. The missed years, the silence, the absence, the pain. Lily leaned back slightly in her chair. "You can't fix the past," she said. Walter nodded faintly. "I know," he replied. "That's the problem." There was a pause. Then Lily leaned forward again. "But you can be part of what comes next," she said. Walter looked at her. There was no anger in her voice, no blame, just truth, and that made it harder. "Do you know what it was like?" she asked softly. Walter's chest tightened. He nodded slowly. "No," he said, "but I can imagine." Lily shook her head. "No," she said gently, "you can't." The honesty in her voice wasn't cruel, but it was sharp. Walter swallowed. "You're right," he said. She looked down at her hands. "I used to wait by the door," she said quietly. Walter closed his eyes briefly. "Every evening," she continued, "I thought maybe today would be the day." Walter's breathing became uneven. "I kept thinking you'd walk in like nothing happened," she said. Her voice trembled slightly. "And I would just run to you again." Silence. Heavy. Walter's hands clenched slightly in the blanket. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Lily looked up. "I know," she said. Another pause. Then she added something that shifted everything. "But I don't want just an apology." Walter opened his eyes. "What do you want?" he asked. Lily held his gaze. "I want you here," she said. The simplicity of it was overwhelming. Not perfect, not fixed, not trying to make up for everything all at once. She leaned forward slightly. Just here. Walter stared at her, because for years he thought he needed to come back with answers, with stability, with something to prove. But she wasn't asking for any of that. She was asking for presence, and that felt possible. Later that night, after Lily finally dozed off in the chair,
Walter reached for something on the side table. The notebook, the one Emma had given him. It was still there, untouched. He picked it up slowly, ran his fingers over the cover, then opened it. The pages were blank, clean, waiting. For a long time, he just stared at them, because writing means facing things, and he had spent years avoiding that. But tonight felt different, because something had changed. He wasn't alone anymore. Walter picked up the pen. His hand shook slightly as he pressed it to the page. Then slowly, he wrote, "Her name is Lily." He paused, looked at the words, then continued, "I thought I lost her, but she came back." His breathing steadied. The next line came easier. "I don't know how to fix the past." He stopped again, then added, "But I don't want to run from it anymore." Walter closed the notebook gently, and for the first time in years, he felt like he had taken a step forward. Not a big one, but a real one. Morning came slowly. Light filtered through the window. Lily stirred in her chair. Walter was already awake, looking calmer, different. "You didn't leave," she said softly. Walter smiled faintly. "I said I would be here." She smiled back, and in that moment, it wasn't perfect, but it was real. And sometimes, that's even better.
The morning Walter left the hospital didn't feel the way he expected. He thought it would feel like freedom, like stepping out of something heavy, like starting over with a clear sense of direction. But instead, it felt unfamiliar. Not wrong, just new. The automatic doors slid open slowly as he walked toward them, the same doors he had been brought through days earlier, cold, weak, fading. Now he walked out on his own, not strong, not fully recovered, but standing, and sometimes that's enough. The air outside was crisp, not as harsh as before. Winter was fading, but it hadn't completely let go yet. Walter paused just outside the entrance. He didn't move right away, because stepping outside meant something bigger than just leaving a building. It meant stepping back into life, and life was unpredictable. "You okay?" Lily's voice came from beside him. Walter nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said. "Just thinking." "About what?" she asked. Walter looked ahead, at the street, at people walking past, at cars moving, at life continuing. "How strange it feels," he said. Lily tilted her head. "Strange how?" Walter let out a quiet breath. "That everything kept going, even when I stopped," he said. Lily didn't answer right away, because she understood what he meant. Life doesn't pause when someone disappears. It moves forward, and when you come back, you have to catch up. "Then we'll go at your pace," she said. Walter looked at her. There it was again, that word, we. Not you, not alone, together, and that made a difference. The apartment wasn't far, a small place arranged through one of the many people who had reached out after the story spread. Simple, clean, warm. When Walter stepped inside, he stopped again, because it didn't feel real. A couch, a table, a small kitchen, a bed in the corner. Basic things, things most people don't think about. But to Walter, they felt like something else entirely. Security. He walked in slowly, almost cautiously, like the space might disappear if he moved too quickly. Lily watched him quietly. "What do you think?" she asked. Walter didn't answer immediately. He walked to the window, looked out, then turned back. "It's quiet," he said. Lily smiled slightly. "That's a good thing," she said. Walter nodded. "Yeah," he said. "I think it is." That first night, sleep didn't come easily. Not because of discomfort, but because of unfamiliar comfort.
Walter lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. No cold wind, no hard ground, no need to stay alert, just stillness. And that kind of stillness can feel overwhelming when you're not used to it. He turned slightly, then back, then finally sat up. The silence pressed in around him, not threatening, but heavy. He reached for something beside the bed, the notebook, Emma's notebook, still with only a few lines written. Walter opened it slowly, read what he had written the night before, then added something new. I slept inside today. He paused, looked at the sentence, then added, It feels strange, but good. He closed the notebook, and this time he lay back down, and slowly sleep came. The next few days were different, not dramatic, but steady. Walter began to rebuild, not all at once, piece by piece. He got clothes that fit, shoes without holes, meals that came regularly, and something else, something even more important, routine. Because routine had once been his foundation, and now he was building it again. A week later, he stood outside a small hardware store. The sign above the door was slightly faded, but the place looked alive. Tools lined the windows. A bell hung above the door. Walter stared at it for a moment. His hands felt slightly tense. You don't have to do this today, Lily said gently. Walter shook his head. No, he said, I do. He reached for the door, paused, then pushed it open. The bell rang softly. A man behind the counter looked up. You must be Walter, he said. Walter blinked. Yeah, he replied. The man smiled. Heard about you, he said. Figured we could use an extra set of hands. Walter nodded slowly. I haven't done this in a while, he admitted. That's all right, the man said. We'll figure it out. There it was again. We. The first day wasn't easy. Walter moved slower than he used to, forgot things, second-guessed himself. But no one rushed him, no one judged, and that mattered. By the end of the day, he was tired, but it was a different kind of tired, not the exhaustion of survival, the tiredness of effort, of purpose. That evening, he walked back to Maple Street, not because he had nowhere else to go, but because he wanted to. The bench was still there, unchanged, waiting. Walter stood in front of it for a long moment, then sat down. Same spot, same angle, but everything felt different. Because this time, he wasn't stuck. He was choosing to be there. A few minutes later, a familiar voice came from behind him. You're late. Walter smiled before turning. Amor. Backpack on, same time, same energy. I had work, he said. Emma's eyebrow raised. Work, she repeated. Walter nodded. Yeah, he said. I have a job now. Emma's face lit up. See, she said. I told you things would change. Walter chuckled softly. You did, he admitted. She sat down beside him. Are you going to leave the bench now? She asked. Walter looked at it, then shook his head. No, he said. Emma frowned. Why not? Walter smiled. Because this is where everything started. Emma thought about that, then nodded. Okay, she said. They sat there quietly for a moment. Then Emma asked, Do you feel different? Walter leaned back slightly. Yeah, he said. How? He thought about it, then answered honestly. Like I have something to lose again, he said. Emma looked at him. That's good, she said. Walter nodded. Yeah, he replied. It is. The sun began to set. The light softened. And for the first time in a long time, Walter wasn't just surviving the day, he was living it.
Spring didn't arrive all at once. It never does. It came quietly, in small, almost unnoticeable ways. The air softened first. Then the snow disappeared, not dramatically, but slowly, melting into the cracks of the street, vanishing into drains, leaving behind damp pavement and the faint smell of change. The maple tree above the bench began to shift too, Tiny green buds pushed through branches that had been bare for months. At first, you wouldn't notice them unless you were looking closely, but they were there, growing, waiting, just like Walter. By now, Maple Street had returned to its usual rhythm: morning rush, afternoon movement, evening quiet. People walked past the bench every day, just like they always had. But something was different. Not the street, not the bench, Walter. At first, the changes were subtle. A cleaner coat, shoes that didn't drag when he walked, a posture that was no longer weighed down by constant exhaustion. Then came something more noticeable. His eyes. They weren't distant anymore. They followed movement. They reacted. They noticed back. And people began to notice that. The first time it happened, it surprised him. A man walking past slowed slightly, looked at Walter, then nodded. Just a small nod, but it was intentional. Walter hesitated, then nodded back. The man kept walking. That was it. No conversation, no big moment, but something about it stayed with Walter, because that hadn't happened before. Before, people avoided eye contact, looked away quickly, pretended he wasn't there. Now, someone had seen him, acknowledged him, and that small moment felt bigger than it should have. Later that day, Emma arrived, right on time. "You're thinking again," she said as she sat down beside him. Walter glanced at her. "I do that sometimes," he replied. Emma smiled. "I know. What about this time?" Walter looked ahead at the street. "Someone nodded at me today," he said. Emma blinked. "That's normal," she said. Walter shook his head slightly. "Not before," he replied. Emma paused, because now she understood. "Oh," she said softly. Walter leaned back against the bench. "It felt strange," he admitted. "Good strange or bad strange?" she asked. Walter thought about it. "Good," he said, "but also confusing." Emma tilted her head. "Why confusing?" Walter exhaled slowly. "Because I didn't change overnight," he said, "but the way people see me did." Emma considered that carefully, then said something simple. "Maybe they just needed time to see what I saw." Walter looked at her. "And what did you see?" he asked. Emma shrugged. "You," she said. No hesitation, no explanation, just truth. Walter let out a quiet breath, because sometimes the simplest answers are the hardest to understand. At the hardware store, things were changing too. Walter moved more confidently now. He remembered where tools were placed, knew how to help customers, understood the rhythm of the place. One afternoon, a customer approached him. "Excuse me," the man said, "do you know where I can find a wrench set?" Walter nodded. "Aisle 3, left side." The man smiled. "Thanks," he said, and walked away. No hesitation, no judgment, just normal interaction. Walter stood there for a moment after the man left, because that felt new too. Not being questioned, not being doubted, just being trusted. That evening, Walter returned to the bench again, not because he needed to, but because it reminded him of where he had been, of how far he had come. A group of teenagers walked past, laughing loudly. One of them glanced at Walter, then did a double take. "Hey, aren't you that guy from the story?" he asked. Walter hesitated. "I guess so," he replied. The teenager grinned. "That's cool," he said, and just like that, they kept walking. No mockery, no cruelty, just acceptance. Walter sat there quietly after they left, because for the first time, his past wasn't something people used against him. It was something they respected. Later, Lily joined him. She sat on the other side this time,
"You've been coming here a lot," she said. Walter nodded. "It helps me think," he replied. Lily looked around. "This place," she said slowly, "it used to feel sad." Walter glanced at her. "And now?" he asked. She smiled slightly. "Now it feels important." Walter let that settle, because she was right. The bench hadn't changed, but its meaning had. Emma arrived shortly after. "You both beat me here," she said, dropping her backpack. Walter chuckled. "We've had practice," he replied. Emma sat between them. "This is weird," she said suddenly. "What is?" Lily asked. Emma looked at both of them. "You were on the bench," she said, pointing at Walter, "and now you're not." Walter raised an eyebrow. "I'm still sitting on it," he said. Emma shook her head. "No, I mean you're not stuck here anymore." Walter went quiet, because that word, stuck, was exactly what he had been, for a long time. "Yeah," he said softly, "I'm not." Emma smiled. "Good," she said. The sun dipped lower. Golden light stretched across Maple Street. People passed. Some glanced. Some smiled. Some didn't notice at all. And that was okay, because Walter didn't need everyone to see him anymore. Just enough. Just the ones that mattered. As the light faded, Emma asked one more question. "Do you think people really change?" she said. Walter looked ahead, then answered slowly. "I think people don't always change who they are," he said. Emma frowned slightly. "Then what changes?" she asked. Walter smiled faintly. "They remember who they were," he said. Emma thought about that, then nodded. "I like that," she said. Lily smiled too, and Walter, for the first time in a long time, felt something steady inside him. Not fear, not doubt, something stronger. Belonging. Time has a quiet way of moving forward. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just steadily. Days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months. And before you realize it, life has shifted. Maple Street looked the same. The bakery still opened early. The laundromat still hummed through the day. Cars still passed. People still walked. The bench still stood beneath the maple tree. But something about it had changed. Not in the wood, not in the shape, in what it meant. It was late afternoon, the kind of afternoon where the sunlight feels soft and golden, where shadows stretch long across the sidewalk, where everything feels calm. Walter sat on the bench, same spot, same place, but not the same man. He wore a clean jacket. His posture was relaxed. His eyes followed the world, not from a distance anymore, but as part of it. Beside him sat Emma, swinging her legs like always. Some things never change, and that's a good thing. "You're early today," Walter said. Emma shrugged. "I finished my homework in school," she said proudly. Walter smiled. "That's new," he said. Emma nudged him slightly. "I'm improving," she replied. Walter chuckled softly. "I can see that." They sat quietly for a moment. Not awkward, not empty, just comfortable. The kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. A few steps away, Lily stood talking on the phone. She had stopped by after work, something she did often now, not out of obligation, but because she wanted to, because this time she wasn't losing him again. Emma looked around, then back at Walter. "Do you ever think about before?" she asked. Walter knew what she meant. Before the hospital, before the story, before everything changed. "Yeah," he said. "Does it make you sad?" she asked. Walter thought about it, really thought. Then he shook his head slowly. "Not the way it used to," he said. Emma tilted her head. "What do you mean?" Walter leaned forward slightly, resting his arms on his knees. "It used to feel like something I couldn't escape," he said. Emma listened closely. "Like no matter what I did, it would always follow me," he continued. She nodded. "And now?" she asked. Walter glanced at her. "Now it feels like something I learned from," he said. Emma considered that. "So it's not heavy anymore?" she asked. Walter smiled faintly. "It's still there," he said. Emma frowned. "Then how is it different?" Walter looked ahead, at the street, at people passing, at life continuing. "Because it doesn't control me anymore." Emma's expression softened. "I like that," she said. Lily walked back over. "All done," she said. She sat down on the other side of Walter, and just like that, the bench felt full. Not crowded, complete. For a while, none of them spoke. They just sat together, watching the world move. And for Walter, that meant everything. Because there was a time when he sat on this same bench and felt completely alone, invisible, like the world was happening without him. And now he was part of it again. Emma suddenly spoke. "I have a question," she said. Walter smiled. "You always do." Emma grinned. "This is an important one." Walter nodded. "All right," he said. "Let's hear it." Emma took a small breath. "Do you think everything happens for a reason?" she asked. The question hung in the air. Lily glanced at Walter, curious, because she wanted to hear the answer too. Walter leaned back slightly. He didn't answer right away because some questions deserve time, and this was one of them. He looked at the tree above them, at the leaves that had once been bare, now full, alive. Then he looked at the bench, at the place where everything had started, then at Emma, the girl who chose to stop, and at Lily, the daughter who chose to come back. Walter took a slow breath. "I don't think everything happens for a reason," he said. Emma blinked. "You don't?" she asked. Walter shook his head. "No," he said. Emma looked surprised. "Then what do you think?" he asked. Walter smiled gently. "I think things happen," he said. Emma listened carefully. "Good things, bad things, things we understand and things we don't." He paused, then added, "But what matters is what we do after." Emma's expression shifted, understanding. "If something bad happens," Walter said, "we can let it define us." He looked down briefly. "Or we can decide to keep going." He looked back up. "To try again, to reach out, to care." Emma nodded slowly. "And that's what changes things?" she asked. Walter smiled. "That's what changed everything," he said. Emma leaned back slightly, satisfied. "I like that better," she said.